Pythagorean Theorem. Let's do this. It's how you find the third side of a right triangle. So we'll warm it up. 5 squared plus 6 squared. 5 squared is 25. Whoa, wow. Always an adventure when you start. 25 plus 6 squared is 36. 25 plus 36 would be 61. Great. That was almost too easy. 9 squared minus 4 squared. 9 times 9 is 81. 4 times 4 is 16. If we subtract those, we get 65. Square root of 196, if you type that in your calculator, it's just 14. Technically, it could also be negative 14, but don't worry about the negatives today. When you square root a fraction, you just square root each part. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 49 is 7. And the square root of 1.44, if it was 144, it'd be 12. So this would just come out to 1.2. All right, those are skills you're going to need today. You're going to need to be able to square things, add them together, square them, subtract them, and square root things. It's how you find the third side of a right triangle. So a right triangle has two legs that form a 90-degree angle, which they always put a little square there for you. And then the only side not touching that right angle is called the hypotenuse. It's the longest side, and it's always across from the 90-degree angle there. So there is an equation that says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are the legs. C is always the hypotenuse. So a formula, the way I've seen it written, which I think is better, is to say a leg squared plus leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So the hypotenuse always needs to go on the side by itself. Now let's actually start working with this formula. What is the length of the hypotenuse of the triangle below? We are given two legs. It doesn't matter which one you write first. But every time we have to take the legs, square them, and add them together. So we're going to do 9 squared plus 12 squared. And we're going to set that equal to our hypotenuse, c squared. Now we could do the left side. 9 squared. 9 times 9 is 81. 12 times 12 is 144. Are those like terms? Yeah. So you can just do what it says. Add them together. You get 225 equals c squared. But we're not looking for c squared, we're looking for c. So the inverse operation of squaring something is to square root it. We got to square root both sides, and the square root of 225 is 15. So our hypotenuse came out to 15. Now make sure when you guys are done with these that your answer makes sense. The hypotenuse has to be the longest side. If we have 9, 12, and 15, yeah, 15 is the longest side, so that's a good indicator that we probably did it right. We can trust our instincts. Otherwise, you could always go back and recheck your math there. What is the length of the hypotenuse of a right triangle with the legs of lengths 7 and 24? If it helps, draw it out. But we already know we're looking for the hypotenuse, which is always by itself. So we're going to have the legs squared, 7 and 24. So 7 squared plus 24 squared is going to equal our hypotenuse squared. You could put any variable you want. You could put x, c, doesn't matter. We'll just keep it consistent and go with c on this one. Now, 7 squared, 7 times 7 is 49. I don't know what 24 squared is. $576. Now we can add those together. Plus 49, 625. 625 equals c squared. It's always going to be our last step when we're finding the side. We're going to square root it. Square root of 625. Oops. 25. It was our hypotenuse, so you should make sure that's the longest side. Our other sides were 7 and 24. Is 25 bigger than those? Yeah. Now we're going to have to find a leg. They're going to give us the hypotenuse and one of the legs. A fire truck parks beside a building such that the base of the ladder is 16 feet from the building. The fire truck extends its ladder 30 feet as shown below. How high is the top of the ladder above the ground? So if you look, we have it coming out 16 feet. Okay, we have it going diagonal at 30 feet, so the 30 would be our hypotenuse. Now we have to find this other leg. So if we were to set up an equation, and again, the order of the legs never matters. So we could say b squared, that's one of the legs, plus 16 squared equals the hypotenuse, 30 squared. All right, now if we did 16 squared, 16 times 16 is 256. So we have b squared plus 256, 30 squared, 30 times 30 is 900. Now think of your equation days. If it just said b plus 256, you would subtract 256. We're going to do the same thing. Just because it's squared, that doesn't affect our steps yet. Minus 256, minus 256. B squared equals 644. Let me double check that. 900 minus 256, 644. So that's b squared. So we need to square root that still. Square root of 644. I don't know why I wrote 4. I'm just going to erase it. Sometimes I'm a perfectionist, sometimes I'm lazy. You just never know what you're going to get. Alright, square root of 644, 25.3. 25.37, so let's call it 25.4. Now that is this length right here. But if you look at the picture, it says, how high is it off of the ground? So we still have this 10-foot space between where the ladder started and the ground. So if we want to know what it would be from the floor all the way up, we would have to do 10 plus our 25.4, which would just give us 35.4 feet. So there was that extra curveball on this one of the adding 10. All right, okay, we're smart, we can do it. Use the figure below. About how many miles is it from downtown to the harbor? Round to the nearest tenth of a mile. So here's our downtown to the harbor. We're looking for a leg here. So we've got one of our legs is 4, so we can say 4 squared, plus our other leg is b, equals, our hypotenuse in this case is 8. What's 4 squared? 4 times 4. 16. 16 plus b squared equals 8 times 8 is 64. Now how can we get rid of that 16? You know we're going to subtract it. Let's see, 58, 48. B squared equals 48. Now when we square root 48, we're going to get a decimal. Because 49 is, square root of 49 is 7, so it's just going to be like 6.9-ish. Let's see, square root of 48, 6.928. So if we round it to the nearest tenth, that would be 6.9. And we're talking about miles on this problem. So 6.9 miles. Great. So we found the leg, we found a hypotenuse. Let's see what else we got. Oh, all right. So the converse of the Pythagorean theorem is they'll give you 3 side lengths and they'll say, would this form a right triangle? Could it form a right triangle? So you just have to test, is the leg squared plus the leg squared equal to the hypotenuse? And remember, the hypotenuse is always the longest side. So it's in order on number 5. Our longest side is 13. So we have to check and see if 5 squared plus 12 squared is equal to 13 squared. 5 times 5 is 25. 12 times 12 is 144. 13 times 13 is 169. So if we add 25 plus 144, we get 169. 169 equals 169. So yeah, those can be sides of a right triangle. Great. 7, 9, and 12. Our longest side is 12, so make sure you put that on the side by itself. 7 squared plus 9 squared equals 12 squared. 7 times 7 is 49. 9 times 9 is 81. 12 times 12 is 144. So if we did 49 plus 81, we get 130. Does 130 equal 144? No. Don't be silly. And then 10 foot, 26 feet, and 24 feet. Ooh, curveball. They didn't put it in order for us. Oh dear. The longest side is 26, so that would have to be the hypotenuse. So we're going to have to check and see if 10 squared plus 24 squared equals 26 squared. 10 times 10 is 100. We did 24 squared earlier. I believe it was 576. And then let's see, 26 squared, 676. 100 plus 576 is 676. So yeah, it could be a right triangle. Nice. All right. I think we got some tough word problems, and then we're wrapping up here. Suppose you're standing at the top of a diving platform, h feet tall. Looking down, you see a ball on the water 12 feet from the bottom of the diving platform, as shown below. Find the distance d to the ball. Let me move this out of the way. So we're searching for d if the height is 6 feet and if the height is 12 feet. So we're looking for the hypotenuse, but we're going to try two things. We're going to see what would the hypotenuse be if we were 6 feet up, and what would the hypotenuse be if we were 12 feet up. So if it was 6, instead of h there, we could say 6 squared plus 12 squared equals d squared. 6 squared, 6 times 6, 36. 12 times 12, 144. If we add those together, we get 180 for d squared. But we got to square root that still. Let's see, square root of 180 is 13.4. So if it was 6 feet up, then the distance to the ball would be 13.4 feet. Now let's try it when the height is 12 instead of 6. So our legs would both be the same. It'd be 12 squared plus another 12 squared equals d squared. We know 12 squared is 144. So we will have 144 plus 144 equals d squared. Whoops, I switched colors. That would give us 288 equals d squared, and we have to square root that. Square root of d squared, 288, 16.97, which would round up to 17 for d on that one. So roughly 17 feet if we were rounding. All right, suppose you know the distance d to the ball is 16 feet. How tall is the diving platform? So now they're giving us the hypotenuse. They're saying this is 16. So we're looking for a leg. We're looking for a leg. So we could say h squared plus 12 squared equals 16 squared. 12 squared, we've done it 5 times already. It's 144. 16 squared was 256. So now we have that extra step of we have to subtract the 144. 256 minus 144 is 112. We got to square root that still. Square root of 112, 10.58. So we'll say 10.6. 10.6 feet. Great, we got one more. Find the height of the sail. Now, is that a leg or a hypotenuse? It's a leg. Hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So we'll call that x. So we could say x squared plus 12 squared equals 18 squared. Wow, another 12 squared, 144. I don't know what 18 squared is. 324. You gotta get rid of plus 144 by subtracting it. X squared equals 180. That's 144. 180. And we gotta square root that. Square root 180. 13.4. 13.4. And it was feet. Nice. So we did it. We found some legs. We found some hypotenuses, hypoteni. And now we're done.